హాయ్ ఎవ్రీవన్. సో లాస్ట్ టైం నేను ప్రిలిమ్స్ పేపర్ ఎలా సాల్వ్ చేశాను అనేది డిస్కస్ చేశాను లాస్ట్ వీడియోస్లో, గ్రూప్ 1 ప్రిలిమ్స్. సో దిస్ టైమ్ ఆల్సో నేను వీడియో చేయాలనుకున్నా వాట్ విల్ బీ ద ఎమోషన్స్ అండ్ హౌ ఐ ఆన్సర్డ్ ద క్వశ్చన్స్ ఇన్ ద ఎగ్జామ్ హాల్. సో మార్నింగ్ లేచాను. సో టైం ఆల్మోస్ట్ 9:40 అయింది. 9:40 అయినా కూడా నేను ఏదో ఒకటి చదువుతున్నా. ఎందుకంటే టెలిగ్రామ్ గ్రూప్లో చాలామంది చాలా క్వశ్చన్స్ చెప్పారు. క్వాంటమ్ కంప్యూటింగ్ వస్తుంది, దాని తర్వాత వ్యాక్సినేషన్ గురించి అడుగుతారు, ఇస్రోలో ఈ మిషన్స్ ఏందేందో చెప్పేసరికి నాకు ఇంకేం చేయాలో తోచక 9:40 వరకు చదువుతూనే ఉన్నా ఎగ్జామ్. ఇంకా లాస్ట్ 5 minutes అన్నప్పుడు పోలీస్ అన్న వచ్చి, అరే పోరా బాబు, లేదంటే పంపింగ్ లోపలికంటే పరిగెట్టుకుంటూ వెళ్తా. ఆ గ్యాప్ ఏదైతే ఉంది కదా, మనం ఎగ్జామ్ పేపర్కి రాసేదానికి ఆ వాక్ ఉంటుంది కదా, ఆ వాక్లో నాలో చాలా ఎమోషన్స్ వచ్చాయి నిన్న మాత్రం. ఎందుకంటే నేను జాబ్ చేసేటప్పుడు నాకు అసలు టైమే దొరకలేదు. లిటరలీ చెప్పాలంటే సైన్స్ అండ్ టెక్నాలజీ చదివింది జస్ట్ ఆ 1 day ముందు ఏదైతే చదివానో హాఫ్ డే అంతవరకే చదవగలిగాను. అండ్ నా బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్కి వచ్చేసరికి ఐ హ్యావ్ ఆల్రెడీ గివెన్ యూపీఎస్సీ మెయిన్స్ చాలాసార్లు ఇచ్చాను. ఇట్స్ నాట్, అండ్ గ్రూప్ 1 కూడా ఇచ్చాను. ఇట్స్ నాట్ దట్ కి ఫస్ట్ టైం దట్ ఐఎమ్ కవరింగ్. సో అది నా డిస్క్లైమర్ అనమాట. ఐ హ్యాడ్ ప్రీవియస్ నాలెడ్జ్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ ద థింగ్స్, హౌ ఎగ్జామ్ వర్క్స్ అనేది క్లియర్గా ఉంది. సో ఐ హ్యాడ్ దట్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్. బట్ సమ్టైమ్స్ వాట్ హ్యాపెన్స్, ఆ టెలిగ్రామ్ గ్రూప్స్లో ఏదేదో క్వశ్చన్స్ పెట్టారు. సో నేను చేయగలుగుతానా లేదా అన్న ఇన్ని ఎమోషన్స్తో కూర్చున్న ఎగ్జామ్ హాల్లో. లాస్ట్ మూమెంట్లో ఒక బ్రోని అడిగాను అనమాట, ఇట్లా సోలార్ ఎనర్జీ వీటి గురించి ఆ నెంబర్స్ చెప్పమంటే వెంటనే మా బ్రో హెల్ప్ చేశాడు. 168 GW అనేది ఏదో సంథింగ్ చెప్పాడు, అది రాసుకున్నా. అదే ఫస్ట్ బుక్లెట్ ఇవ్వగానే వెనకాల నాకు తెలిసిన నెంబర్స్ అన్నీ రాసేసారు రఫ్ షీట్లో. వాట్ ఈజ్ వాట్, ఎంత పర్సంటేజ్, విండ్ ఎనర్జీ, సోలార్ ఎనర్జీ ఎంత, క్లైమేట్ చేంజ్ గురించి అన్నీ రాసుకొని పెట్టుకున్నాను అనమాట, ఉపయోగపడతాను. సో వెంటనే పేపర్ ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత ఓపెన్ చేసిన. సో ఇది మన గ్రూప్ 1 పేపరు. సో ఆబ్వియస్లీ ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ చూసా. ఫస్ట్ నేను చెక్ చేసుకున్నా, అసలు టెక్నికల్గా ఇచ్చాడా లేకపోతే జర్నలిస్ట్ పేపరా లేకపోతే టెక్నికల్ పేపర్ చూద్దాం అనుకొని ఫస్ట్ ఓపెన్ చేయగానే నేను ఇస్రో గురించి చదవాలా, డిఆర్డిఓ ఓన్లీ ఇంటిగ్రేటెడ్ మిసైల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ చదువుకున్నాను. ఫస్ట్ నా మైండ్లో ఇస్రో క్వశ్చన్ ఏమొచ్చిందిరా బాబు అని చెప్పి ఎతుకుతా పోయా. ఇక్కడ ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ చూసేసరికి టెక్నాలజీ, హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ అనేసరికి ఓకే ఫైన్, జనరల్ క్వశ్చన్. దాని తర్వాత డిజిటల్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్ అన్నాడు, అది కూడా జనరల్ క్వశ్చన్. సో ఓవరాల్గా క్వశ్చన్ పేపరు నేను చూస్తా పోయా. ఇస్రో క్వశ్చన్కి నాకు మెయిన్ థింగ్. సో ఫైనలీ దే డి నాట్ ఆస్క్ అబౌట్ మిషన్స్, దే డి నాట్ ఆస్క్ అబౌట్ డిఆర్డిఓ. ఐ వాస్ సేఫ్. సో ఐఎమ్ వెరీ లక్కీ అనుకున్నా. దాని తర్వాత నెక్స్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ పోయా. సో ఓవరాల్గా క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్ ఇట్లా లుక్ ఇచ్చుకుంటూ పోయా. టైం చూసా ఆల్మోస్ట్ 10:05 అయిపోయింది. ఇంకా క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్ స్టార్ట్ చేద్దామని చెప్పి ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ ఏం రాద్దామని ఆలోచించాను. ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్, టెక్నాలజీ ప్లేస్ ఎ కీ రోల్ ఇన్ ట్రాన్స్ఫార్మింగ్ హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ ఇన్ అడ్రసింగ్ ద ఇండియాస్ హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ ఛాలెంజ్. సో ఇమ్మీడియట్లీ వాట్ ఐ నో వాస్, వాట్ ఈస్ హెల్త్ సెక్టర్. సో ఏంది కలర్ ఇట్లా వస్తుంది, ఓకే గ్రీన్ పెడతాం బాగుంటుంది. సో ఫస్ట్ హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ క్వశ్చన్ అడగానే ఐ నో దట్కి హెల్త్ సెక్టర్లో మనకు మేజర్లీ 3 points ఉంటాయి హెల్త్ సెక్టర్లో. వన్ ఈజ్ ప్రివెన్షన్, అదర్ ఈజ్ డయాగ్నోస్టిక్ అండ్ ట్రీట్మెంట్, అండ్ అదర్ ఈజ్ ఇంక్లూజన్, సోషల్ ఇంక్లూజన్ అనమాట. వెదర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ యాక్సెసిబుల్, అఫోర్డబుల్, ఇంక్లూజన్ అనేది. ఫిఫ్త్ థింగ్ ఈజ్ అబౌట్ యూ టాక్ అబౌట్ ఈక్విటీ. So I thought about these 5 aspects in covering the answer. So one is prevention, one is diagnostic, one is treatment, one is financial affordability. So I thought to write the answer in these 5 aspects. So immediately నేను ఏం చేశానంటే హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ అని చెప్పి ఒక సర్కిల్ గీసి దానికి 5 ఇట్లా గోళాలు పెట్టి ప్రివెన్షన్, డయాగ్నోస్టిక్, ట్రీట్మెంట్, సో దట్ ఎగ్జామినర్కి తెలిసిపోయింది మనోడికి హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ గురించి చదువుకొని వచ్చాడని చెప్పి. సో ఆ హబ్ అండ్ స్పోక్ డయాగ్రామ్ వేసిన తర్వాత ఇమీడియట్లీ స్టార్ట్ చేస్తా. ప్రివెన్షన్కి ఎట్లా టెక్నాలజీ హెల్ప్ చేసింది. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ప్రివెన్షన్, ఐ థాట్ అబౌట్ ఎర్లీ డిటెక్షన్ ప్రివెన్షన్. నేనేం రాశాను, యా ఐ థింక్ హెల్త్ సెక్టర్ ఐ టాక్డ్ అబౌట్ హెల్త్ స్టాక్ అనేది ఒక సిస్టమ్ ఉంది, ఆయుష్మాన్ డిజిటల్ హెల్త్. అండ్ ఐ ఆల్సో టాక్ అబౌట్ స్మార్ట్ వాచెస్ లైక్ వేర్ దే ఆర్ ఎబుల్ టు టెల్ యూ యూనో హౌ మచ్ యూ షుడ్ వాక్ రన్, అట్లాంటి కాన్సెప్ట్ రాసా. దాని తర్వాత డయాగ్నోస్టిక్లో ఐ టాక్డ్ అబౌట్ like how they are able to using artificial intelligence, how we are able to detect cancers, glaucoma. And I also talked about YSR Kanti Velugu, like how it is able to use technology. And also I talked about telemedicine and all those things. And then I talked about treatments. In treatment I spoke about like cancer treatment, chemotherapy, how it is being used, and surgery using robots, and these 2 points. And then I talked about finance, how finance using and the insurance sector దాని గురించి మాట్లాడా, అండ్ ఈక్విటీ కన్సర్న్స్. సో ఫైనలీ ఐ నో దట్ కి ఐ టాక్డ్ అబౌట్ ద ఫస్ట్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వశ్చన్. సో దీనికి 5 మార్క్స్ ఇస్తారు మోస్ట్ ప్రాబ్లీ, ఐఎమ్ ఎక్స్పెక్టింగ్ దీనికి 5 మార్క్స్ ఉంటుంది. సో ఐ 1.5 పేజ్లో ఈ 5 మార్క్స్ రాసా. దెన్ ఐ హ్యాడ్ లెఫ్ట్ విత్ ఆల్రెడీ క్లాక్ చూసుకుంటే 10:15 అయిపోయింది, and I already breached my time limit, but somehow I had to finish the question fastly. So immediately I saw what is the health sector challenge. Immediately I spoke about equity concerns, how for affordability. I talked about insurance penetration, how in health sector it is lacking. Okay, insurance penetration, దాని తర్వాత కాస్ట్ అండ్ అఫోర్డబిలిటీ, దాని తర్వాత అవైలబిలిటీ అండ్ ఆల్ దోస్ థింగ్స్ రాసేసి, అండ్ వే ఫార్వర్డ్ రాయాలి కాబట్టి ఇన్ ద 3rd పేజ్ ఐ స్టార్టెడ్ రైటింగ్ వే ఫార్వర్డ్. లైక్ ఐ స్పోక్ అబౌట్ హౌ village health clinics, family physician concepts, are going to transform health sector. Just in rush of moment I had no points in mind, I just completed the answer. Time already I think it was 10:20. By 10:20 I was able to complete the first question. So then in 10:21 roughly I started. So I was had to choose between like digital platforms dramatically improve the quality and accountability of public service. Okay, citizen centric governance. So immediately I just took this question. So I marked what are the keywords. So it's a very lengthy. So if you see here, there are 2 subparts. One 5 marks. This is for 5 marks. In these 5 marks they divided into 4 parts, into 1 mark for each thing. So we have to write about technical, economic, social bottlenecks, and then some conclusion. So in a way I thought that నాకు టైం వచ్చి ఆల్మోస్ట్ 10:20 అయిపోయింది. సో somehow I had to complete this question in 10:30. So I had no choice, no descriptive answers, just point wise రాసేసి ఈ 5 మార్క్స్కి న్యాయం చేయాలనుకున్నాను. So immediately what I did was, so the main point is digital platforms, how they are going to improve citizen centric governance. So what I did immediately, I wrote what is citizen centric governance. So hub and spoke model pattern, mali same thing. What is citizen centric governance? So you talk about accountability, transparency, grievance redressal, okay, capacity building, and some administration, ICT administration, something itla hub and spoke పెట్టిన తర్వాత then I started writing about various things. So how for grievance redressal you have mygov.in, okay, and then for accountability and transparency I talked about open governance system అనే పోర్టల్. దాని తర్వాత how it improved quality of governance అని చెప్పి ఉమంగ్ పోర్టల్. సో ఐ స్టార్టెడ్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయినింగ్ ఆల్ ద పాయింట్స్ ఫర్ ఈచ్ హబ్ అండ్ స్పోక్. ఈ స్పోక్స్లో ఏదైతే ఉందో ఒక్కొక్క పాయింట్కి ఒక్కొక్క యాప్. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ease of governance, I spoke about how Aadhaar is DBT Aadhaar. And then second I talked about Umang app, okay, one stop అది. దాని తర్వాత then I spoke about mygov.in for grievance redressal and also e-pragati system. సో నాకు ఆల్మోస్ట్ 1 పేజ్ అయిపోయింది అది రాసేసరికి. And then I had to write another 5 marker. So already time was 10:27 or something. So I thought to complete in 10:30, but నా టైం చూస్తే అది I was going to breach that time. So immediately I just put out that technical, what are the technical issues. I spoke about simple points, 3 points rasa technical lo. One is availability of 5G, దాని తర్వాత లాస్ట్ మైల్ కనెక్టివిటీ ఉండదు. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇన్ రిమోట్ ఏరియాస్, బార్డర్ ఏరియాస్ యూ డోంట్ హ్యావ్ దిస్ కనెక్షన్. Then I immediately went to economic situation. Obviously it's a huge capital investment and all those things. And then social bottlenecks I wrote about red tapeism, how bureaucracy is not able to these things, and other thing is gender imbalance, okay, urban rural divide, and I spoke about these bottlenecks. Time was already 10:35 or something, so already నేను 2 questions I took more than 35 minutes, so it was a danger bells for me. So I had no option to rush the next 3 questions in the 25 minutes time. And then question వచ్చేసరికి then I had to choose. So I was very lucky that they did not ask me any direct questions. ఎంత హ్యాపీ ఫీల్ అయ్యానంటే, ఎక్కడైనా వాళ్ళు కనుక బై మిస్టేక్ మిషన్స్ అడుగుంటే నాకు అక్కడ 1 మార్క్ కూడా వచ్చేది కాదు. ఈవెన్ ఇఫ్ దే వుడ్ హ్యావ్ ఆస్క్డ్ అబౌట్ డిఆర్డిఓ, ఐ వుడ్ హ్యావ్ లాస్ట్. అండ్ ఆల్సో అదర్ థింగ్ వాస్, ఎగ్జామ్ ముందర రోజు ఇస్రో సిలబస్ చూస్తే ఇస్రో డిఆర్డిఓ ఉంది. సో మొత్తం స్పేస్ గురించి ఇచ్చేస్తున్నారు ప్రతి ఇయర్. ఈసారైనా డిఆర్డిఓ గురించి అడుగుతారని చెప్పి ఐ రెడ్ అబౌట్ లైక్ ఇంటిగ్రేటెడ్ మిసైల్ డెవలప్మెంట్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ సమ్ ఇది చదువుకొని వచ్చాయి. కానీ ఏపీపీఎస్సీ బౌన్సర్ ఇచ్చి స్పేస్ ఇచ్చింది, బట్ సమ్హౌ ఇట్ సేవ్డ్ మై యాస్ లైక్ యా. సో ఈ క్వశ్చన్ రాద్దాం అనుకున్నాం, వాట్ ఈస్ స్పేస్ జంక్ గురించి. స్పేస్ జంక్ ఎందుకంటే దీంట్లో మల్టిపుల్ సబ్ పార్ట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. సో ఎక్కడైతే మల్టిపుల్ సబ్ పార్ట్స్ ఉంటాయో యూ విల్ హ్యావ్ డివిజన్ ఆఫ్ 3 రఫ్లీ. సో ఈజీ స్కోరింగ్ చేయొచ్చు మల్టిపుల్ సబ్ పార్ట్స్ ఉంటాయి. బట్ సమ్హౌ స్పేస్ జంక్ అనేసి టెక్నికల్ ఛాలెంజెస్, దాని తర్వాత నేత్ర, యాక్చువల్లీ ఇది రాసుంటే అయిపోయిండేది, బట్ సమ్హౌ ఐ వాస్ మోర్ ఇది రాద్దాం అనుకున్నా. సో ఇమీడియట్లీ ఏం చేశానంటే ఇంట్రొడక్షన్ రాసా, లైక్ విత్ ఇన్కార్పొరేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎన్ఎస్ఐఎల్, నేషనల్ స్పేస్ ఇండియా లిమిటెడ్, ఇన్ స్పేస్ సెంటర్. సో ద గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా సిగ్నల్డ్ టువర్డ్స్ privatizing the space sector. That's the first thing that I spoke. Immediately I started writing about why space industry must look for private investment. Then I spoke about how it going to. So ఇక్కడ ఒక పాయింట్, నాకు ఎంత మార్కెట్ ఉంటుంది స్పేస్ ఇండస్ట్రీకి తెలియదు. రఫ్గా $1 trillion రాద్దాం అనుకున్నా, సరే $2 trillion రాసేసి బై 2050 అని పెట్టేసా. సో బై $2 trillion ఉంటుంది, బై 250 అని చెప్పి పెట్టేసి immediately I started writing some points like private sectorలో how మనం ఎంగేజ్ చేయాలి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ యూ కెన్ స్పీక్ అబౌట్ ప్రైవేట్ బూమింగ్ స్టార్టప్స్ కల్చర్ ఇన్ ప్రైవేట్ సెక్టర్. లైక్ యూ కెన్ టాక్ అబౌట్ స్కై రూట్ స్పేస్, స్పేస్ ఎక్స్, అది 1 point అవుతుంది. దాని తర్వాత and then we want to commercialize, because over the long years ISRO is successful in developing launch vehicles, satellites and all those things. So it will be a great market for ISRO, and it will also be a great use for economy, like అంటే జీడిపి పెంచడానికి కరెంట్ అకౌంట్ డెఫిసిట్, అది 3rd point. 4th point వచ్చి ఐ రోట్ అబౌట్ వాట్ ఈస్ దట్, నాకే గుర్తులేదు. I think I wrote about industry research collaboration. For example, we have seen how SpaceX is successful in bringing down the cost by collaborating with NASA. So I think I wrote that point. Then slowly, and then I had to move out. And other point what I wrote is, if ISRO privatizes with its privatizing arm like NSIL and in space, ISRO as a department can focus more on research. So research ki chala focus ekku scope untadi if they separate private sector, commercial part and research part. So I think that's what I wrote. పెద్దగా పాయింట్స్ ఏం లేదు నాకు, 2 పాయింట్స్. ఇన్ స్పేస్ అంటే ఏంటి, NSIL అంటే ఏంటి, మేజర్గా ఇదే తీసుకొచ్చారు, ప్రైవేట్ ఇండస్ట్రీ కోఆపరేషన్ తీసుకొచ్చి. సో దట్స్ వాట్ ఐ రోట్. బట్ స్టిల్ 3A ఎవరైతే రాశారో దే హ్యాడ్ హ్యూజ్ స్కోప్ ఫర్ గెటింగ్ మోర్ మార్క్స్ కంపేర్ టు, బికాస్ దే హ్యాడ్ మోర్ సబ్ పార్ట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. స్పేస్ జంక్ అంటే ఏందో ఉంది, ఛాలెంజెస్ ఏదో ఒకటి రాయొచ్చు, నేత్ర. సో ఈ 3 టాపిక్స్ గురించి రాస్తే ఇట్ విల్ బీ ఏ గుడ్ థింగ్. సో నెక్స్ట్ క్వశ్చన్కి వచ్చేసా. సో ఇది గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ అనమాట. సో దిస్ వాస్ pretty simple question, what is green energy and what is green energy corridor. So I had pretty good idea about green energy corridors except the facts. సో ఇది బేసికలీ నేను ఎప్పుడో చదివింది. గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ గురించి ఎవ్రీవన్ నోస్ వాట్ ఈస్ గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ. యూ జస్ట్ హ్యావ్ టు రైట్ అబౌట్ renewables and non-fossil fuels. So we can talk about solar, geothermal, tidal energy, wind energy. So ఒక ఫోక్ డయాగ్రామ్ రాసేసి హబ్ అండ్ స్పోక్ గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ రిఫర్స్ టు ఇది ఇట్లా పెట్టేసి దాని సింపుల్ డెఫినేషన్. గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ రిఫర్స్ టు generation of energy from renewable sources and those and generation of energy which has low carbon footprint and what is the other thing, greenhouse gas emissions, low carbon footprint and less impact on the environment for sustainable development. ఒక 3-4 lines వస్తుంది. I think the time was roughly 10:50. నేను 4th క్వశ్చన్ రాసేటప్పుడు నా టైం 10:50 అయిపోయింది. సో ఐ నో దట్ నాకు అర్థమైపోయింది రెస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వశ్చన్స్కి నేను కనుక జ్యుడిషియస్గా టైం యూస్ చేయకపోతే ఐ విల్ బీ మిస్సింగ్ అవుట్ సో మెనీ క్వశ్చన్స్. సో ఇమ్మీడియట్గా ఏం చేశానంటే, సో ఐ స్టార్టెడ్ రైటింగ్ అబౌట్ గ్రీన్ ఎనర్జీ, ఇట్లా ఫోక్ డయాగ్రామ్ రాసేసా. దెన్ ఐ started talking about green energy corridors. See, green energy corridors is nothing but you will be having multiple green energy sources, like you will be having from nuclear, you will be having from hydrogen, solar power, wind power, everything. But ultimate concept of green energy corridors is that you try to evacuate whatever the energy that is being generated from these sources and connect into the grid system. That is the basic concept of this. So then I spoke about how it is economical, how it's helpful in environment, and how it can act as a doubling farmers income. And you can speak about PM Kusum. You can speak about waste to energy plants where they can generate energy and they can connect it to grid and earn money. And I also spoke about how it's going to benefit environment and all those things. So it was a pretty simple question. So I think I completed in 11:03 something, roughly around 11 and 11:05 మధ్యలో I completed 4 questions. So it's a very poor management of time from my part, but due to lack of practice I can't help myself. ఇంతకంటే నేను చేయగలిగింది ఏం లేదు. సో ఇమీడియట్లీ ఐ సా నెక్స్ట్ క్వశ్చన్కి వచ్చేసా. సో క్లైమేట్ చేంజ్ ఈస్ ఎ గ్లోబల్ కన్సర్న్, why it's need urgent intervention to combat it, explain why, discuss how climate smart agriculture mitigates devastating effects of climate change. సో ఐ వాజ్ వెరీ హ్యాపీ, ఎందుకంటే క్లైమేట్ స్మార్ట్ అగ్రికల్చర్ గురించి జస్ట్ ఎకనామిక్ సర్వేలోనో ఎక్కడ చదివా. సో వాట్ ఈస్ క్లైమేట్ స్మార్ట్ అగ్రికల్చర్ అంటే, సో క్లైమేట్ స్మార్ట్ అగ్రికల్చర్ అంటే ఇట్ విల్ హ్యావ్ మల్టిపుల్ ఫార్మింగ్ సిస్టమ్స్, లైక్ యూ విల్ బి హ్యావింగ్. సో లెట్ మీ ఫస్ట్ టెల్ అబౌట్ వాట్ ఐ రోట్ ఇన్ ద ఫస్ట్ పార్ట్. Climate change is global concern. So immediately I wrote, like, as per IPCC report and UN reports that climate is gonna cost you a lot of disasters and all those things. So urgent intervention is required, simple definition. Then I started writing about what are the negative impacts that are going to get with climate change. It's the same thing. You talk about disasters, you talk about agriculture, you talk about impact on health, you talk about how GDP losses and all those things, how unemployment is going to created, and how submergence of small island nation, how it's going to melt the glaciers and all those points. And I think I completed in 5 minutes because point wise rasesa. I know that నేను టైం సేవ్ చేయాలి because I have to complete 10 more questions, 11 more questions in 2 hours. So that's a big task. So immediately climate smart agriculture, I immediately draw the hub and spoke model. What is climate smart? So I talked about it is regenerative farming, it is integrated farming, it is precision farming, it is organic farming, it is natural farming. So these are the five types of farming that economic survey has said that it comes under the category of climate smart agriculture. So what I did immediately is that I drawed a hub and spoke model. Then simply I spoke about how it's going to help. Same thing, precision farming is that it tries to use the energy efficiently so that carbon footprint is reduced. Similarly about integrated farming, how it's going to help the decrease in during drought conditions, how it's going to carefully utilize. And also I spoke about food security, I spoke about disaster proofing, I spoke about various other aspects. Roughly it's a not a good attempt because it's very open-ended questions. So how it's going to mitigate climate smart agriculture and how it's going to mitigate. So rudimentary points, same thing: food security, disaster support, food productivity, and water, soil fertility, and all, and carbon footprint. These are the things that we can expect to write in Ante Rasa. I don't know what examiner thinks. I think already it was 11:10. సో 11:10 AM నేను 5 క్వశ్చన్స్ కంప్లీట్ చేశాను. ఇట్స్ వెరీ వెరీ ఫకింగ్ బ్యాడ్ థింగ్ that happened to me in the exam. Like, so I was all. So next question, what I had to write is about. So next question I attempted 6B attempt చేశాను. So in 6B what I wrote was like so I just wrote what is municipal solid waste definition, and I just threw some random fact which I don't know it's correct or wrong. I just put it 20,000 tons per day is generated across the cities, and that's a pure random shit. I know that I had no option, I had to write some fact. And then after writing that, and I wrote some random points regarding challenges. One is challenge regarding governance, second is land, third is lack of segregation units, fourth is landfilling, incineration techniques, and other is environmental concerns, fifth is like rapid urbanization. So these are the challenges for disposing massive amounts of municipal solid waste. So after writing these points, then I saw the question: discuss the action plan for municipal solid waste management more than 500 tons per day. So this is the keyword here. So basically I literally don't know what to do at this moment of time in the exam, so I just spit out whatever the points I know. So what I wrote was, I just wrote waste to energy conversion from national biofuel policy, and then I wrote about proper segregation of units. Third, I wrote about urban administrative bodies, proper activity mapping must be there between these two, between different organs of the municipal body. And then I wrote about proper disposal techniques must be utilized. Okay, more decentralized municipal solid waste management must be there. And then I wrote about legal measures like municipal solid waste management rules under Environment Protection Act, so those things. Literally it was a very bad attempt as for this question. I don't know how many marks I know. Examiner naku oka 3-4 marks chesina I will be happy for the attempt. I just wrote in 1.5 page because I didn't have pretty much points regarding these things. So next question is regarding the biotechnology. So first I initially thought to confuse biotechnology with blockchain technology. So in the 13th question I think there is blockchain technology. So in the heat of the moment, when the clock is almost 11:20 or something, 11:20 or something, I had no choice. I thought blockchain technology and immediately thought about writing ecotourism, and I framed few points. But suddenly I because I was not getting pretty much points here, so again I went back and I saw the biotechnology question. So and immediately wrote what is biotechnology, what are the different applications of biotechnology. So I wrote about industry, I wrote about health, I wrote about genetic engineering, I wrote about what is this food technology, I wrote about space and all those things. Just draw a hub and spoke model and each point for blessing. So I wrote the blessing as subheading and talk about each point, and also law and order. And what about curse of biotechnology, and same thing, half page low. Curse of biotechnology is like you can talk about ethical concerns, legal concerns, you can talk about environmental concern, economical concern. Roughly I wrote only 1.5 page because I attempted this question in the last moment. So I had very much less time to write this, so I wrote only these few points. So after this, as far as this questions like biopesticides, I was very lucky. నేను చదివిన ఏకైక టాపిక్లో కరెక్ట్గా వచ్చిన క్వశ్చన్ బయోపెస్టిసైడ్స్. సో ఇది మంచి అటెంప్ట్ అనుకుంటున్నా. ఐ డోంట్ నో వాట్ ఎగ్జామినర్ థింగ్స్. See, biopesticides is simple that I wrote what are biopesticide definition and I draw the simple flow chart diagram. What are biopesticides? You have chemicals, you have microbial biopesticides, you will be having plant incorporated biopesticides. For example, like BT crops, and here we will be having viral, virus, bacteria, this, what is that? Virus, protozoa, bacteria, fungus, and parasites. Similarly, again here cannel oil, phosphorus, neem, etc. And then I wrote about why it's going to impact. Okay, what are the important reasons? Here question lo clear ayadu. Like, but however they are good. You have to ultimately show that biopesticides are good. So I spoke about how they are they are a major component of climate smart agriculture. And then I spoke about food security, I spoke about food chain, bio concentration, bio magnification issues. I spoke about biosafety, Cartagena protocol, and I also spoke about there is a huge demand for organic products. Okay, so organic certified products in the market, so it's going to increase the income of the farmers if you use biopesticides and all those things. But however, there is some negative points to it, like it's very less productive, it's very less ఏదో రాశాను అనుకుంటా, because it's not insect specific, it's like generic substance. Okay, it acts against all the things. It's not like it's going to be very specific, it's not going to be region specific, it's a universal specific. So, and also it's very less effective, it's not going to kill all the major plants and all those things. That's why because, and in the conclusion what I wrote is, as the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, it is high time that the whole shift towards biopesticides in order to mitigate the impacts of climate change. That's the point I wrote. And I also spoke about in advantages super bugs అనే పాయింట్ కూడా రాసా. నెక్స్ట్ థింగ్ for 9th, for 9th I was very lucky again. So somewhat unlucky also, because so last year the previous question they asked about intellectual property rights. So what I expected was they will ask me what are the steps taken by the government in development of science. So నేను ఏందేందో చదివేసా ఎగ్జామ్కి వెళ్ళే ముందర. ఐ స్టడీడ్ ద సైన్స్ టాపిక్స్ లైక్ ఎనీథింగ్. లైక్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో ఆంధ్ర ఇన్నోవేషన్ సొసైటీ ఉంది, దాని తర్వాత కాన్సెప్ట్ సిటీస్, ఏందేందో పాయింట్స్ చదువుకొని బట్టి పట్టుకొని ఎగ్జామ్ హాల్కి వెళ్ళే ముందర కూడా బట్టి పట్టా. ఈవెన్ రఫ్ వర్క్ ఉంటుంది కదా, అక్కడ కూడా క్వశ్చన్ పేపర్ ఇచ్చే ముందర రాసుకున్నా ఇది తప్పకుండా వస్తుంది. చూస్తే మళ్ళీ ఎగ్జామినర్ ఇంటలెక్చువల్ ప్రాపర్టీసే అడిగాడు. సో బట్ ఇట్ వాస్ అనలిటికల్ క్వశ్చన్ కాబట్టి, సో యు ఆర్ నాట్ ఇన్ ఎ డిసడ్వాంటేజెస్ పొజిషన్ కంపేర్డ్ టు అదర్స్. సో immediately I started writing this 9A, because 9B I thought it was very specific. They are not talking about how to improve intellectual properties, but rather they spoke about commercialization of intellectual property rights, and they did not talk about general steps, they talked about tools. Again it's very specific. And also CPAM gurinchi I didn't have any idea. So, and it's also very specific question. In very specific question you have to have very specific answers, you can't just write general stuff. So I did not choose this, so it was a general question. So it's very easy to write the 9A. For example, I studied, what I know is there are two things when you consider intellectual properties. So you have to write paper submissions, you have to file IP filings. These are the three major points that I know. Only 7% of the publications in high journals is made from India, and only 2% of the papers submitted by Indians get published in high impact journals. So these 2 points I know. And also I know that India spends very less amount in this research and education, like roughly less than 1% India spends. on research and education. So I just started with these points, and I in initial introduction line I wrote India is the 5th largest economy, so India is growing such a rate. But రాసిన తర్వాత I wrote rest of the points. And as far as body of the part is concerned, so we have to write why innovations are not being done in India. So you have to talk about research and development, industry academia collaboration, and you have to speak about pedagogy training, and you have to talk about why this lack of awareness among the people regarding intellectual properties, and also lack of awareness about commercialization of intellectual properties. And after writing those 5-6 points, and I also spoke about how there is a good network of investment spending by US and China. Roughly about 6% of the GDP is invested in these things. And then I simply wrote about what are the other ways how we can improve the patent generation, innovation, and all those things, and I completed the answer. Next is the inefficient farming and poor distribution are reasons for world's food shortage, and genetically modified crops are a bad answer to the wrong problem. See, and it's again a very analytical question. Okay, so there is too much of analysis to be done here. You need to speak about the factors of why inefficient farming and poor distribution are reasons for food shortages, and why genetically modified crops is a wrong solution. So it's very easy, appears to be easy, but it requires a lot of technical points to be written. So I immediately rejected this question, so started with this thing. And why I choose 10B is that so many subparts are there here. You can see there is almost like 4 subparts are there. You can see here why monitoring and forecasting is crucial, discuss ISRO in weather prediction and capabilities in disaster management, and add a note on NISAR. So immediately I started writing why monitoring and forecasting is crucial. For example, so what I wrote for this point is that as far as monitoring and weather forecasting, I wrote about disaster management, I wrote about navigation, okay, I wrote about farmers, I wrote about logistics and other stuff. As far as farmers, I wrote about how the weather monitoring helps in crop planning and all those things. As far as navigation, I talked about civil aviation, the Gagan app. And as far as disaster management, I spoke about how it helped in landfall tracking and all those things, and urban floods and all those things. And for as far as disaster management, how ISRO has helped, I spoke about they have developed different coordination techniques with Indian Meteorological Department and this ISRO. So they have very good coordination in order to predict rainfall, in order to predict urban floods, in order to predict wind patterns, in order to predict drought, in order to predict various cyclones, and I gave an example like how in 2013 cyclone Falin in Orissa was the most successful efforts of managing a disaster in India. And then I wrote about what is Project NISAR. I exactly know the definition, and I don't know what NISAR will do. So in exam what I did is, so NASA India synthetic aperture radar, that's all, that one point. And in the what is it role, I just wrote role of NISAR, and I just started scribbling many points. So NISAR will be having in navigation, NISAR will be having in GPS, communication satellite, disaster management, some random stuff. I thought any one point would connect with NISAR. So I didn't know what NISAR actually does. I only know the definition and which 2 countries are involved in it. So in order to avoid any marks cut for not writing anything, I just started scribbling
whatever stuff. I wrote about how it helps in disaster management, one line, and I wrote about how it helps in this communication satellite, and wrote about how it helps in GPS and all other stuff. So I think I was left about like 1 hour 40 minutes for completing the rest of the paper. This is the most happiest thing happened as far as 11B is concerned. So what question ante, what is the current scenario of renewable power generation in India, and discuss the factors responsible for growing focus and shift towards renewable energy. So I just started simply writing the facts. So just before the exam, as my friends gave some facts, he showed me facts. So what is the renewable energy current? So immediately I started writing. So current renewable energy power generation is around like 168 gigawatts, and for solar it's like roughly around 60, and for wind it's around 40, and for small hydro it's around 50, and for biofuels it's around roughly like 10 gigawatts or something like that. And I didn't know any idea about geothermal energy and what is the tidal energy. So I just mentioned that they are part of the renewable energy generation, but there is no significant development as of now. And then I spoke about various schemes that are being responsible for growth, and then I started writing about discuss the factors responsible for growing focus and shift towards renewable energy. Then I spoke about how India, since Paris Climate Conference, and with its renewed Panchamrit strategy, there is a huge policy shift. Like I started writing about Panchamrit goals. So in order to achieve these goals, we are moving towards renewable energy. Second point, I wrote about great financial support that is provided by government of India to shift towards renewable energy. I spoke about viability gap funding and subsidies that are offered to ultra mega solar power parks. And I spoke third point, I spoke about various schemes like Kusum scheme is there, and national biofuel policy is there, and there is offshore wind policy, and due to all this policy support there is major push. And I also spoke about the cost of generation has come down with respect to these things, and also I spoke about how it is climate friendly. So if you set up waste to energy plants, you're not only pushing the energy connection, but also you're trying to help the nature as well. So this way there is a huge policy shift and towards renewable energy. And after completing this, this is the last week. I attempted this question in the last, like when the bell is about to ring, like 5 minutes before, roughly at the time 12:55, I think I started this question. So I know I had only 5 minutes of time. Okay, in 5 minutes of time, what I can do is just scribble whatever the points I know. So what I simply wrote is, what is coastal erosion? So I simply wrote coastal erosion refers to erosion of coastal areas, around coastal areas, around beaches and all those things. And I wrote about India is subjected to a lot of coastal erosion. Then I spoke about what are the factors causing coastal erosion. So I simply scribbled the points. So there is no neatness in presentation when I was writing, because it was only 5 minutes left. So as far as writing coastal causes, I wrote about wind erosion, I wrote about submergence, divergence, I wrote about intertidal movements, I wrote about manual anthropogenic reasons like construction sites, tourism sites, roads, buildings, constructions along the coast. And I spoke about how there is urban flooding, mangroves, deforestation, and all those things I wrote with respect to coastal erosion. And why coastal erosion is dominant in eastern coast and western coast, because I know I am not going to write much. So in order to see that, I wrote in 2 pages. I just drew the India map, which was very bad. I am regretting the decision to draw the India map, because the shape of the India map is totally bad. I don't know if people get hurt, I might get less marks. I don't know. I hope examiner doesn't get hurt with this thing. So what I wrote is, I just drew the diagram and I just draw this. In western coast I wrote it is a submergent coast, and eastern coast I wrote it is a divergence coast. So why and dominant is, I started writing that there is too much delta formation, there is too much mining activity, and too much to scope for tourism potential, and also I wrote about this area is prone to too much of flooding. Okay, lot of deforestation activities going on, just some random stuff. Okay, there is no much, nothing to do. And as far as conclusion is concerned, I wrote integrated coastal management is required in order to prevent erosion. That's all. Hardly I wrote 1.25 pages in that 5 minutes, and I gave the paper to the invigilator madam. As far as 13A is question, I think I wrote this question in about 7 minutes due to lack of time. So the most important climate goal is limiting the Earth's warming in 1.5 degrees Celsius. What happens to the world if we pass the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate threshold? So there is only, this is very open-ended question, so it's very tough to write. Whenever the question is open-ended, either you overdo the question or you do not answer the demand of the question. That is the danger with open-ended question. My suggestion is, whenever there are number of parts in a question, try to attempt that. So whenever there are number of parts, you will have less time to write, because there is very less marks are awarded for each question. So 3 marks, 4 marks, 6 marks. So they don't expect you to analyze anything. What they expect is some keywords to be written, and also there is high chance that you will get good marks. As far as these type of open-ended questions, you are not satisfied by yourself, and the exam is also not satisfied. You are prone to write 2.5 pages. So what I did was, I only had 7 minutes. I know I'm not going to write much due to lack of time. So in the heat of the moment, I just wrote as far as Paris COP26 climate conference of UNFCCC, it was very important for the global average temperature to limit itself to 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid climate crisis. That's all. One simple introduction, and I wrote what happens if we pass the crucial. So put the heading impacts of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Then simply I started writing scribbling point. I wrote global warming is going to increase, disaster managements are going to increase, weather patterns, impact on economy, okay, and impact on urban island nations, small island nation, submergence will happen. And also I wrote about how the melting of glaciers will result into various changes in climate patterns. उसके बाद I wrote about health impacts, more number of heat strokes, cancerous can be developed. ऐसा बोल के लिख के I think 7 minutes లో నేను ఇంతకన్నా ఏం చేయలేను. సో వాట్ ఐ డిడ్ వాస్ ఐ డిడ్ంట్ హ్యావ్ ద టైమ్ టు రైట్ కన్క్లూజన్ ఆల్సో. ఐ సింప్లీ రోట్, సో క్లైమేట్ చేంజ్ మస్ట్ బీ లిమిటెడ్ టు 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid the dangers of climate change. That's all. I didn't attempt this question perfectly because in exam I didn't have much time to write this thing. Second, this is my beautiful question. See, again, if we had a good knowledge about this non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, discuss the civil nuclear and nuclear suppliers group on nuclear power generation in India, it's a good question. Okay, but it requires a lot of analysis. Okay, and as far as coming to B question, what are e-waste recycling practice in India? Discuss the highlights of new e-waste management rules 2022. See, why I am lucky as far as this is concerned is, before going to exam in the morning, I studied what happened to 2016 rules and what new changes have been brought in 2022. There is a website called Mondac something website I saw. He clearly explained what government has changed from 2016 rules to 2022. So I know this thing. So immediately I started writing what is e-waste, how much e-waste is generated in India, like around 2.5 million tons is generated, of which 0.7 million tons is only processed. I wrote that fact as per CPCB, and then I started writing e-cycling practices. So e-cycling practices, like we will be having this extended producer responsibility, you will be having a lot of refabrication units that is being generated, and I spoke about how collection process ये सब चीज़ें हैं and what are those things, and I wrote about what are the problems with current e-recycling process. Lot of informal sector is involved, pollution and all those things. Then I started writing about e-waste management rules 2022. Previously in 2016 there were only 22 products in the list. Now the government has expanded to more than 100 products. It has included medical waste, it has included drone technology, it has included various spare parts of sensors and all those things. That's why it's a very good thing. It broadened the scope of e-waste management rules. And second, it has defined who can collect who can act as agents to recycle the products. Initially they have in 2016 what government did was it tried to decentralize the approach. Okay, state government can authorize dealers, has set up authorized dealers, and even local government were also given power. But in 2022 rules, CPCB was the sole authority to decide who can recycle, who can act as refurbishing agents, and they have to obtain certificate from the CPCB. And third point, important point, was the fines were increased. The fine system was increased in e-waste management rules. ఇలా కొన్ని పాయింట్స్ ఏదైతే మైండ్కి వచ్చాయో అది రాసా. బట్ ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ వెరీ గుడ్ ఇన్ ఇంటర్నేషనల్ రిలేషన్స్, you could have attempted the previous question, but somehow I chose to write this question, and I also wrote this in only 1.5 pages because I was having very less points. To be frank, I was having very less points. And as far as last question is concerned, so I don't know what is gene sanctuaries and how do we protect gene diversity of plants in India. Again, it's very technical question. If you know this answer completely only, you can write. This is analytical question. Discuss why India did not sign COP26 pledge to stop deforestation and cut methane gas. I don't know, they haven't signed this. This is the first time I saw this point because it happened in 2021 Glasgow summit. So I have no idea that India, but I clearly know that India, CP26 pledge, India took an important stand. I know that because we haven't completely utilized the coal resources, we haven't completely utilized the developmental process, we have not attained the status of development. So India was always of the view that the climate, whatever the climate mitigation tactics must not be seen as a uniform or one size fits all approach. They had to have the CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities, because the developed countries are more responsible for whatever the climate change that is happening rather than the developing countries. So India and China has always pushed that we shall attain the status of development by slowly adapting the practice of green energy, but at the same time they are not going to completely stop the utilization of fossil fuels like coal, methane generation and all these things. So what they did was, India tried to do was, India adopted Panchamrit strategy, okay, and they did not want immediate ban. So they gave a target of 2070, 2030, 2045 and all those things. And another thing was they followed CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities, and they also wanted REDD plus principle for afforestation techniques, and also they enacted Forest Conservation Act, where they balance developmental needs and as well as they balance environmental needs. So whenever you try to clear forest for developmental reasons, you try to recompensate with whatever the forest that has been cleared in some other areas, so in order to ensure that forest cover is not damaged. Second, and I also wrote about mangroves construction and all those things. So what ultimate aim was, India's aim was to mitigate climate, but they wanted to have a differential approach. Okay, but developing countries must be given some time so that they can attain they can eliminate poverty, they can eliminate whatever the, and also meet the development standards of the people. And also it was very costlier to immediately shift to the renewable practices. So I think I wrote these points. I think I very well attempted this, okay, because since it was analysis question, I tried to attempt this question. So overall